Good afternoon, everyone. Most often, after clinical death, people remember something pleasant, in an unearthly light, communication with benevolent beings, a feeling of happiness. But sometimes there are stories that describe a terrible place, full of suffering and despair. That is hell. This issue will focus on people who claim to have been to hell. Assistant engineer Thomas Welsh from Oregon stumbled and fell into the water while working on a future sawmill, hitting at the same time on the crossbars of the scaffolding. This was seen by several people and a search was immediately organized. About an hour later he was found and brought back to life. But the soul of Thomas in this period of time was far from the scene of the tragedy. Having fallen from the bridge, he unexpectedly found himself near the huge fire ocean. This sight startled him and terrified him. A lake of fire extended around him and occupied the entire space. It seethed, and Thomas himself watched him from the side, but there were quite a lot of people around, not in the lake itself, but next to it. Thomas even recognized one of those present, although he did not speak to him. They once studied together, but then died, as a child, from cancer. The people around were in some kind of thoughtfulness, as if bewildered by the spectacle of the terrible lake of fire, near which they found themselves. Thomas himself realized that together with them he was in a prison from which there was no way out. He thought that if he had known in advance about the existence of such a place, he would have tried during his lifetime to do everything in his power not to return here. As soon as these thoughts flashed through his head, Jesus himself appeared before him. Thomas was delighted, because he believed that he would help him get out of there. I didn't dare to ask for help. Jesus passed by without paying any attention to him. But before leaving, he turned around and looked at him. This look returned Thomas' soul to his body. He heard the voices of people nearby, and then he was able to open his eyes and speak. One patient died of a heart attack. She developed shortness of breath, after which she felt that she had separated from her body. Suddenly she found herself in a gloomy room, where she saw a terrible creature of enormous size. He was watching her. Nearby ran dwarfs and demons. This monster remembered her to himself, and the woman, against her will, followed him. There was darkness all around. There were groans of people. Someone was running around her all the time. She felt their touch on her legs. Then the tunnel ended. She woke up among even more vile creatures. The woman was crying, but she couldn't change anything. But then the giant who had accompanied her sent her back. She realized that she was sorry. At the same moment she woke up in her bed in the hospital. Another patient developed severe pain due to inflammation of the pancreas. He was given medication, but they did not help much, and he lost consciousness. At that moment, he began to leave through a long tunnel. I am surprised that it does not touch him with his feet. He moved, as if floating in space. This place was very similar to a dungeon or a cave, filled with eerie sounds and smells of decay. He forgot part of what he saw, but villains emerged in his memory, whose appearance was only half human. They spoke their own language and teased each other. Dying in despair, Jesus exclaimed, "Save me!" Immediately a man in a shining robe appeared and looked at him. Here I felt an indication that we must live differently. The man didn't remember anything else. Perhaps consciousness did not want to keep in memory all the horrors that he saw there. Kenneth Hagin, who became a priest after a near-death experience, described his visions and experiences in a pamphlet called My Testimony on April 21, 1933. His heart stopped beating and his soul separated from his body. She began to descend lower and lower until the light from the earth completely disappeared. At the very end, he found himself in the pitch darkness of absolute blackness, where he could not even see the hand under the eye. The further he descended, the more hot and stuffy the space around him became. Then he found himself in front of the road to the underworld, where the fires of hell were visible. A fiery sphere moved towards him, which began to attract him to itself. The soul did not want to go, but could not resist, as it attracted, like iron to a magnet, Kenneth Abdullah with heat. He ended up at the bottom of the hole. There was a creature next to him. At first he did not pay attention to him, fascinated by the picture of hell spreading herself in front of him. But this creature put her hand between his elbow and shoulder to guide him to hell itself. At this time, the voice of the God of Words himself was heard. The future priest did not understand, but felt his strength and power. At that moment, his companion loosened his grip and some kind of force pulled him up. He found himself in his room and slipped into his body, just as he had come out through his mouth. The grandmother, with whom he spoke when he woke up, admitted that she thought he was already dead. There is a description of hell in Orthodox books. One man, learning from illness, prayed to God to deliver him from suffering. The angel sent by him offered the sufferers to spend 3 hours in hell instead of 1 year on earth in order to cleanse their souls. He agreed. But, as it turned out, in vain. It was the most disgusting place imaginable. Everywhere there was darkness, gloom, spirits, malice. The cries of sinners were heard. There were only suffering. The patient soul experienced unbearable fear and languor. No one responded to his cries for help, except for Hellsham rolling flames. It seemed to him that he had been there for an eternity, although the angel visited. He explained that it had only been an hour. The sufferer begged to be taken away from this terrible place and was released, after which he patiently endured his illness. According to the ideas of the Church, hell is a place where the souls of the dead are separated from God. Sinners are tormented by remorse and unsatisfied passions. Therefore, there is constantly heard crying and gnashing of teeth. The same needs that a person had on earth, in the underworld, will torment even more and will not be satisfied. The addict will have eternal withdrawal. The drunkard has a hangover, the smoker has a craving for tobacco. Gluttony will suffer without food, and a harlot from desire and flesh. But, oddly enough, hell was not created for punishment, it turns out for a sinful soul. Being close to God is also a kind of torture, as she is immersed in darkness. Cannot rejoice in light and grace. The pictures of hell are scary and not attractive, but they give a reason to think about a lot, to reconsider your attitude to life, to your desires and goals. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and share with your friends. Even more interesting videos on the channel. How do you like the video? Write in the comments.